I welcome you all to the program interface, and today we have our esteemed guest, Professor M. Madhava Prasad, and is one of the very efficient and eminent film scholars in India, and is right now working as professor in Culture Studies Department, English and Foreign Languages University. He has published a lot of books on the film studies and many other subjects. And two of his books are very important, very seminal studies in this field. One is Ideology of Hindi Films, and the other one is on the cine politics, especially about film and society and politics, their interlinkages in the South Indian context, historical and political context. So I welcome you, Dr. Madhava Prasad, to the program. So let's have some kind of discussions about the stock kind of problem which right now people are discussing. There is 100 years of or 100 and odd years of history of cinema as such as a medium, and especially about the 100 years of Indian cinema history. How do you place this medium called cinema in the development of the human civilization, human history at this particular point of time?
Sure, thank you. Thank you. It's yes, 100 and more than 100 years have elapsed since the beginnings of what we now know as cinema, which is, of course, the term we use for the cultural phenomenon of which is based upon the technology of film, which has a long history, and until it became a cultural force through the production of documentaries and narrative films, which is it was of course considered a very minor curiosity, which might just impress a few people in the beginning, but has no greater value. So, but within a very short span of time after its invention, film technology was adapted to the representation, the capturing of actual reality on all around the world. We may remember that the Darbar of 1911, when the Emperor King, when we were a colony of the British, came to India, one of the big events at that time was, one of the big factors at that time was that it was possible to film the entire thing, and there was fascinating we have remnants of that film, because all the princes who went to pay their respects to the king were, of course, not only was there an official cinematographer doing capturing this whole process, but there were also private cinematographers who were hired by each of these princes and other nobles, to say, when I go and see, you must capture, and let me have that.
Each and every moment.
Yes, they would like to show, they have evidence of this. So the idea of evidence, that film as evidence, becomes very quickly established, and it's also that even the idea of the possibility of telling stories is something that begins to occur to people very quickly. 1895, what we get in terms of what Lumiere showed, already had tiny, sort of intimations of narrative possibility, right, within a couple of years. But of course, the development of film language takes much longer, and that is a few more years, and people attribute the biggest advances in film narrative film technique to somebody like D.W. Griffith, the American filmmaker, because he edited film, bits of film into coherent narratives, and he also showed that film, with the help of editing, film could be converted into a medium that actually captures parallel time.
Yeah.
Right? This is one of the great achievements. This idea of parallel time, which is simply suggested by moving back and forth between two scenes, two different scenes of action, and other such innovations, such as the use of the close-up, right, which is a fabulous. I mean, today we don't think twice about it. It comes to us naturally, but the idea that you can actually do that. There is a funny story about an American film producer who, when he was told, I will show only the face of this, I will show a close-up. He said, well, the audience is paying for the whole body, you should, you can't just cheat them by showing just the face or whatever, and so on. So this is, so the growth of a film language, this is how we come to know it as we develop the study of film. What the growth of film language in spurts. Griffith is a great inventor. Suddenly he produces Edwin Porter before him had already done some interesting things, and with Griffith there is a huge leap. But still, Griffith's language, although he had established many of the narrative techniques of cinema, that we still use today, that we still find, there was still a lot to be done, right? And so you have a process of slow, the recognition of different possibilities, moving, as we know, in the films of Méliès. Méliès was one filmmaker who tried to use cinema for the purpose of producing magical kind of entertainment. So, a rocket going to the moon and other kinds.
Maybe we can trace this as the beginning of the special effects.
Special effects. He was a master of special effects. In fact, he was a magician before he became a filmmaker. So he sort of combined the two things that he knew. But you can see even in that history there is this how to bring an object closer. So they would actually put the camera in one place and move the moon or the rocket, whatever it is, towards. They had no way of sort of zooming in on the camera or even trolling towards the camera and other such techniques. So it's a slow process, and it's a fascinating history because we the development of film language in those moments, and how much of it is actually already known within the first 20 years or so. Now, in that context, of course, coming to India, we the 100 years. When we say 100 years of Indian cinema, we normally mean the beginning. We set the beginning with Phalke and his first sort of feature-length film, a story told over several reels, which is the Raja Harishchandra, the story which is somehow a favorite with all filmmakers. I think it really had. One has to study why Raja Harishchandra is made so many times, again and again in Indian film history. However, so he was the Indian pioneer. Now, why he was known as the Indian pioneer is also an interesting fact, which is that it's not as if films were not made in India before 1913. So, in fact, Griffith's film and first film, Birth of a Nation, and Phalke's first film are same, released around the same time.
At this point, can I intervene in the sense, I see very interesting kind of a difference between the kind of, at least in a sort of mature cinema in States, USA, and in India. For example, you were talking about Griffith. Griffith's very important cinematic text is Birth of Nation, directly dealing with the American political history. But in India, the first cinema by Phalke is on a mythology. mythological themes.
Yes.
Almost all his films are like mythological films. Can we find some kind of a reason, quote unquote, about this kind of difference? One cinema which directly starting with the political text, another one with this mythology.
Yes, yes. That's of course one of the big questions of history, film history. But in the first instance, there is also the extraordinarily contradictory fact that Griffith was the most conservative, right-wing minded person you can think of, and that all the advances, the superlative kind of achievements were from films such as Birth of a Nation, which actually were very regressive in their content. And in fact, some people do argue that the revival of the Ku Klux Klan and all that kind of development in the South had something to do with the success of Birth of a Nation. So in that sense, one can say perhaps that in the beginnings, film was treated as this modern, the product of cutting-edge modern technology, right? And so people were overawed by it. It was something that, as if a new spirit from somewhere had come and begun to dwell among us. So you don't know what powers it has, it's that sort of thing. Which you can say that by developing a narrative cinema, what you're doing is sort of somehow you have found a way to incorporate that spirit into your own social world, right? Perhaps to say domesticated. And interestingly, it is through these narratives, through traditional narratives, or at least well-known narratives, if not, the story of the South, American South, and its, the lingering, I suppose, the lingering regrets of the people of the South about the fact that they lost the war, lost the system that they prized so much, and so on. All of which is evident in that film. In a strange way, it seems to be the occasion, the animating occasion, which is able to dominate this new threatening spirit of the cinema, as it were, right? As if, okay, it needs something like that. Otherwise, the other people, the more progressive-minded people, they are thinking of cinema and its spirit in terms of something new and futuristic, right? So they are thinking about humanity, about the need for humanity to sort of raise itself in order to occupy the place of the spirit, to become. So in the Soviet Union, for instance, Soviet cinema, the fundamental sort of idea in Soviet cinema seems to be that you need to somehow come up with a kind of cyborgish idea of man, man as somehow reconstructed by machinery, or become machine in some way, become as if you're going halfway to meet the machine, and so that you merge into some new third entity, of course, it led to some fantastic, film experiments in cinema, in the form of the films that we are left with from the Vertov, Eisenstein, and others. But it was not as successful in dominating, the way that the narrative cinema of Griffith dominated, or the narrative cinema of Palke and its developments dominated the world, and have done so to this day. That is one paradoxes of film history.
That's very interesting, because now almost everywhere, all over the world, narrative cinema has become the dominant or the only one kind of filmmaking pattern. Why this narrative filmmaking become such a huge success among the people? Has it something to do with the power of the medium as cinema has got to do to reflect the realities?
No, it certainly has to do with the power, obviously, but the power is such that it gives rise to different definitions, right? What is this power? Is it a power, and this is the time of revolutions. The communism is the threat that the entire world is facing. And as you know, there is also this, this is the period in which Europe is on the brink of revolution, and Rosa Luxemburg and that whole SPD in Germany, etc. The idea that within some few days some kind of revolutionary transformation is going to happen, and how nationalism, historians always say that nationalism, finally the working class was attracted by the nationalist offer of community and identity, and they said, well, we are German workers first, whereas the working class movement was saying, workers of the world unite, you have nothing to lose but your chains, and your true comrades are those workers from other countries, whereas here the other offer that was being made to them is, well, you are Germans first and workers afterwards. You are a German worker, and you share in the rich heritage of Germany along with all these rich people and the big powerful people. You are also part of that. It's a attractive proposition.
Yeah. Since you have touched upon the topic nationalism, let me ask you one question. How Indian cinemas, I would like to say Indian cinemas rather than one Indian cinema. Indian cinemas role in the so-called famous phrase tryst with the destiny of Indian nation making. What was the kind of linkage? What was their interactions rather between the cinemas, Indian cinemas and the nation making? Because this is very important in the sense, Indian cinema more or less born with the mass phase of the Indian national movement. Almost the same time. Yes. The same decade at least.
Yes.
So what was the kind of, if we can in a very limited time, we can touch upon that.
Yes.
What was the kind of interaction between them?
Certainly. As we know, there was one famous statement in 1927, the Indian Cinematograph Committee put out a number of copies of a questionnaire. It was sent to many people, political leaders, police people, army people, different educationists, newspaper journalists and others, a whole lot of 3,000, 4,000 people roughly. Gandhi, our greatest leader, Gandhi was one of them, and he sent back a small reply. He said, as far as I know, the cinema has so far done no good for anybody. He said, as far as I know, the cinema has only done bad things to people into the world, and if there is any good that has come out of it, I am not aware of it, and so on. 2 lines, he sent to Gandhi. K. Abbas later wrote a letter in which it was just for rhetorical purposes addressed to Gandhi, or at least referred to this episode, and talked about the Indian political movement's indifference to cinema, which I believe continued until independence. And the people in the industry are always looking to government in fact, there are many leaders in the film industry, who are using the language of Hollywood to convince the Indian political leadership that here is something which you need to think about. The workers need leisure time entertainment to keep them, busy, instead of going and committing, antisocial activities and so on. But this doesn't impress our Indian national leadership very much. However, in the same ICC committee inquiries, where people, after answering the questionnaire, were asked to come and in person speak to the committee, right? Many people go, and one of the people who goes is Lala Lajpat Rai, who goes there, and he says the thing is the British want to introduce censorship because they are worried about foreign films, especially Hollywood films, coming into India and giving a very wrong picture in their minds of white people, because you are in charge and you are from Britain, but they also look alike, and they are up to no good in these Hollywood films, dancing and kissing and so on. So they feel that this is something to be curbed.
Yeah.
At that time, however, Lala Lajpat Rai firmly says, you don't have to worry about our souls, our morals, we will take care of themselves. Watching these films is not going to do any harm to our peasants or our children or anybody. So, you are not treating us with great respect here in this country. So, you have no, reason to question us on this front and ask us to participate in your games, censorship and so on. So, in that sense, there is that, but it turns out to be more rhetorical, just as saying we don't want to cooperate with you on this question. But otherwise, it is a very conservative policy. Indian governments have always taken a conservative policy. They refuse to see the value of cinema. But Nehru, who, as we know, is a modernist in all respects. Now, Nehru himself, I do not know whether he appreciated it much. I think there are some statements that he might have done so. But one of the things he did was, as we know, in the early years of independence, he invited a number of people, of progressive-minded people from across the world, from different disciplines, architects, cinematographers, cultural people, political engineers, and so on, to help build this nation, right? This was one of his things. And in that process, he did actually do a lot, or at least plan, a lot of plans were hatched to make film education an integral part of education in India. This is an astonishing thing, if you look at the detail with which it was worked out by Maurice Seaton and others who were given this task, you would think that this nation is really, setting itself for universalized film education from high school level onwards. This was an extraordinary thing, but it always proved to be, never got off to a start.
Yeah, both of us are academicians,
Yes.
working in universities, respective universities, and both of us are dealing with some sort of film studies and all. So, how do you consider the current situation in the university, generally in the academia, about this very strong interest shown in film studies, and many students and teachers in many different faculties, many departments in the universities are offering different kinds of film related courses
Yes.
and all. This kind of interest, how would you evaluate this kind of an interest with its positives and negatives?
Well, on the whole, I think it's a positive development. I mean, this country is awash with cinema. We are not.
Yeah.
You can't get away from it. It's like if you think you might. I don't watch a film, but not watching a film is no guarantee that you are going to be unaffected by cinema. It's that kind of a situation. So. It is not only a positive development, but I believe it's an urgent and vital to the health of the nation, if you like, to be able to teach the children how to appreciate, to study, how to see a film without being a passive victim of its meaning-making abilities, right? That is, without simply letting letting cinema tell you what the world is all about. This is one of the things about these powerful art form like the cinema, or one of the reasons it's called a medium. Is because it is one of the pedagogic apparatuses that all big nations have at their disposal, and so they tend to. So, film industry itself is not in any way biased one way or the other, but there are different types of ideologies, and the most powerful filmmaker, sort of a dominant cinema tends to be one which, out of consideration for commercial interests, tries to suppress any disturbing questions from arising, right? Or even if there are disturbing questions which you cannot avoid, they try to make them as palatable, as easy, to wish them away, to resolve them in artificial climax narrative devices, in order to give the impression that all is well and so on, because they are worried about the prospects of their own films, because if they try to go beyond certain parameters. So the purpose of film then becomes a kind of pill.
Yeah, that means you are a person like many who watch cinema, who consider cinema as a medium in a very serious way. You think that it's not just a medium solely for entertainment, and just watch a film 2 hour or 3 hour narrative text, watch it and just throw it away, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge impactful medium which can make lots of impacts.
Absolutely.
In the society, among the value systems and among the life of the people around. So we have to take cinema very seriously, study it as an institution, as both aesthetic and political, all these aspects. I think you would agree with that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it needs, because the ability to sort of appreciate film language, the way images are converted into narratives which then circulate meanings in society, right? This is a certain ways of coding which allow for easy conveying of messages, and reproduction of different existing forms of ways of life. And on the other hand, the possibility of representing, of narratively depicting new thinking, right? Cinema is also an instrument of thought. It can be, through cinema we can appreciate aspects of our own social reality, our own world, in ways that otherwise would be close to us, right? Without its presence. And so the more our children are film literate, the less likely they are to be simply passive victims of its devices, of the more vulgar devices. I'm not saying I'm not against the idea of film as entertainment. I think entertainment is a relevant and valid sort of thing, as an important thing in human lives. I don't. But there are different types of entertainment. There is entertainment that simply kills your thinking ability. There is entertainment that actually enhances your, perception of the world. Comedy and all kinds of other things. They give you, they can provide you with a certain kind of novel perspectives on your own lives, and through it is entertaining, and yet it is educative, because we cinema brings to us the thinking of other people like us, other people in the world, and we are often as ordinary spectators. What do? We have many thoughts. We don't capture every thought that comes to our mind and give it shape in some artistic or cognitive or other form, right? Because we have to get on with life. Basically, cultural forms, art forms are those in which, because they specialize in it, some people take on the task, and so you are provided with certain material in which you can appreciate those thoughts which we might have missed, as we led our lives as a common people. So you need to, I think the more we are educated in this medium, from a very young age, I would say, the better it would be. And it's a very important national task, I would think, that to be able to do that.
I think with that observation is the right note. we
Okay.
can end this program. Madhava Prasad, it was a pleasure indeed to talk to you.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
a lot.
Thank you for having me.